Welcome to Risky Routes, a short interview series that tells the stories of the moments when travel really forces you to grow up and adapt fast. Because risk creates perspective, and perspective creates success. We talk about those chaotic, uncomfortable, and borderline bad idea journeys that really pushed people to level up, trust themselves, and take control of their lives. I'm your host, Olivia Goldstein. Today, I am joined by Milbert Kiggundu-Bentham, a financial services veteran, like literally through and through, who has held numerous senior roles at Bank of America, Standard and Poor's, and then the former Bear Stearns. She has over 25 years of experience, most recently leading digital engagement for small businesses, and previous experience managing middle market companies' banking needs, and has 8 years in structured product before the financial crisis. Oh my gosh, I'm sure you have lots of great finance stories too.
Yeah.
She's also founded a small business in New York City, which we love, and is a Cornellian, which is double tap love. We love that. Milbert, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this podcast episode.
Yes, same. So I was really excited when you reached out and you told me you have some great stories from East Africa. So where are we talking about?
Okay, so this story is something that I bring up in dinner parties because I've traveled. I've had the privilege of traveling quite a bit, and East Africa is my favorite place to travel. Not only is because I come from East Africa, I grew up in East Africa, but also it's just there's so much diversity across not just Eastern Africa, but also Southern Africa. If you haven't been to South Africa, it's just there's so much to do there. So, but I will share this one story. So,
Wait, where in East Africa? Are we in Ethiopia
no,
or
we are in
Kenya?
Uganda. Okay, we are
Uganda?
currently in
Okay,
Uganda,
okay.
and this story happened 17 years ago. So it's a long time ago,
All
but
right.
it still tops it in terms of stories that I have to share when I talk about travel.
I
So
love it.
I was with my husband and our eldest son, who was 2 at the time. And we decided to go over to the Ssese Islands, and we have some beautiful islands off of the coast of Lake Victoria.
Mhm.
And so I thought I saw this beautiful picture and I thought, wow, let's do this. I mean, I've done tons of safaris. Let's try and do something different. So we went over and we had to take a boat across to this then British owned boutique hotel. And I remember getting to the point where we were taking the boats, and it wasn't really a boat, it's supposed to be a speedboat, but we get there and I'm like, it's not really, doesn't look that robust, but that's okay. I mean, I guess. And I'm like, so is it just my husband and I and my son on this? And he's like, yep, you guys are the only passengers going over today. And I said, okay, great. And I look into the clouds and I said, it's looking kind of like cloudy and like it's going to rain. Do you think we're going to be okay on the water? And he said, yeah, I think it should be fine. And I said, because I don't, okay, I might have to just trust this guy. But I said, but how long does it take to get over there? He's like,
Yeah.
30 minutes. And he's like, it's probably not going to rain for 30 minutes. I'm like, okay. Okay, well, clearly, this is a great hotel. They do this trip all the time. Should be
Yep.
fine. I
Right.
don't know how to drive a speedboat, but we should be okay. So we get on the boat, and a 30-minute trip turns into much longer. And suddenly it starts to rain, and then it's thundering, and
Oh
we are
no.
rocking. And so it's the four of us. So it's like the driver, and then it's the three of us. And
Yeah.
I said, and now I'm saying my prayers. And I said, excuse me. I said, but how many do you have life vests in here? And he says, yeah, I do. And I said, well, how many do
Okay.
you have? And he says, well, I have one. And I said,
What?
okay. So now I'm thinking, and I'm like, okay, so I can swim. My husband can swim. Our 2-year-old cannot swim. So I said, what size is the life vest?
Oh
He's
god.
like, it's an adult size. And I'm like, okay. So now in my head, I'm trying to do the calculation where I'm like, okay, so I guess my husband will wear the adult life vest and then he can carry my son in case he just, and then I can just tread water. And so I'm really literally trying to just
Going
work
through the
through the
motion.
worst case
Yes.
scenario. And this is going on. So an hour later, I'm like, why are we still not there? I don't understand. And he's like, we'll be there. So we call, I called the hotel and I said, listen, British voice answers the phone. Hello, hello. And I said, yeah, we're on the water. We were supposed to be there about an hour ago, but we're still on the water. All right, well, right. I can see the weather's really bad. Just give us a call when you get closer. And so I'm like, okay, perfect. So I hang up and I'm like, and I said to my husband, this is like very uncomfortable. I hate the movie The Titanic, and I feel like I'm on the Titanic right now.
Yes. Yes.
And finally we start to see a little bit of the horizon, right? And I'm like, okay, we're getting close to shore. That's fine. That should take us in a normal day, 20 minutes. But right now, today, I don't know. So we're still on there 20 minutes later, and he suddenly just stops. And when you just need to get somewhere and you're just like, this is a nightmare. Okay, I've
Yes.
just had
Yes.
that.
Yes.
We're all drenched, right? It's like there's no and I said, what just happened? He says, well, what's happened is I think we've just run out of gas. I said, we've run out of gas? So at this point, I remember thinking everything that could possibly go wrong. So we call in the hotel, and of course, like the reception's not great on the water. It's raining. Finally get through. And I said, please, can you send somebody ASAP to come and rescue us? Because this is a nightmare, right? We have a 2-year-old. This is horrible. This should never happen. And so I see these police boats coming over to get us, and we eventually get pulled in land. And if that wasn't the only thing, so we get off. Of course, they've got towels and blankets. Completely, we're literally soaked to the bone. Get into the room, and the weather clears. Uganda is a beautiful place. The food is outstanding. It was exactly the calm that you wanted. Having, and I was working at the time, and so was my husband. So it was wonderful, beautiful day. Ends in a nice way, and then that night, we all go to bed. We're exhausted, and I'm woken up in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. and I just like something rustling. And I'm like, well, what is that sound? Like, I don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
And so I suddenly jump from my bed into our younger son's bed. And the beds in East Africa, because of mosquitoes, they have mosquito nets. So I get underneath the mosquito net with him.
Right.
And I also have woken up my husband, and I said, something is rustling. And he's like, and he's half asleep, deep sleeper. He's like, well, just sleep and we can figure it out in the morning. And I'm like, no, but I can't, because there's something in here. Like it's a thing.
Yeah.
It's not a small thing. It's a thing, like an actual thing. And so he's like, well, let's just see how much noise it makes. And then eventually he's like, okay, yeah, there's something rustling. And I'm like, yes, exactly.
The logic. Let's
I'm
see how much noise it makes.
Exactly. So I said, okay, well, now I'm scared and I don't want to move.
Yeah.
I'm under the covers, and I'm just sitting there, just like literally like freaking out and
Yes.
And I said, well, do you mind putting on the lights and just checking to see what it is? Because I'm
Yeah.
scared. And so my husband's like, but the lights, he's like, I did try to do that, and they're not turning on. And I was like, oh, of course, these this is very typical of East Africa. Lights get turned off at night. And I'm like,
no electricity. Oh,
no electricity. So I'm like, this is a nightmare. I said, I'm going to call the front desk. So of course the phone isn't working because everything's turned off. So I was like, okay, can you and that was the times of the BlackBerry. I said, can you just get your phone and just shine it up at the top, because there's something, I just need to know what that is. And so he's like putting his phone up, and you can imagine having a wife that's stressed out in the back, and you're trying to figure it out and you're half asleep. So I feel for him at the time. But anyway, so he's like, I'm trying to see, and it suddenly occurs to me as he's doing that, I'm like, shit, I know what it is. I'm like, it's a bat. It's gotta be a bat. And I'm like, oh shit. And I hate mice, rats. Like, everybody has their thing. Those are two things, that whole thing just doesn't work well for me. So to me that, oh my gosh, we are so so I said, okay, can we just open the door? Can you shine your light there? It's gonna follow the lights and it will leave. And so my husband's like, but remember they did tell us not to open the doors at night because they're wild dogs that are wandering. And I
Dogs,
said,
cats.
so exactly, that's exactly it. And I was like, well, I said, I don't know. I said, I know there's a choice that needs to be made, and I really, really hate anything that is flying that is a rat. So I said, so can we just take the risk and just open the door? And so anyway, all was well. The bat got out, left. Next
Oh,
day
good.
was a whole nother scenario because right, we're at breakfast, and I don't really want to talk about the bat because we've just had the boat and we've had the bat, and
Yes.
there's a lady that's sitting on a table next to us, and she says, "I just found a bit of glass in my cornflakes." I said, "You know what? I think I've just about had enough." I think for me that was the last straw. And I think and I said, you know what? I honestly, we need to just cut this short. This has been
Yeah.
wonderful and lovely, but we need to just go. And so of course the manager's like, I'm so sorry about this. We'll help you guys get back. I understand it hasn't been ideal. And we have a boat that will be leaving in the next hour. And I said, a boat, another
Oh,
boat. I don't
another
think I'm
boat?
taking another boat and another Titanic. Is there any other way to get off the island? He's like, yes, of course, it will be complimentary. We have small planes that come in. I said, okay, I'll do the small plane. I don't like the idea of small planes because you always hear
Yeah.
about small
Yep.
plane, but
Yep.
I'll do that. I don't want to do the boat. So we get on, the plane arrives and it's a Volkswagen. Literally, it's like a Volkswagen with wings. So it's
Okay.
just like it's a four-seater. And so he's like, okay, just like put the seat, push it forward. So I climb into the back and my son climbs. We're sort of sitting here like this. The luggage is literally on. I'm sitting with my luggage anyway, and my husband's in the front. And I remember thinking to myself, I didn't do enough research. Like, how did we end up in this situation? Like, seriously. So we did fly over it. We did get there in 30 minutes. I was scared throughout the flight because I was like, well, there's the boat and then this flight. And, you know, I'd love to just get your thoughts on this because this trip for me was a very and somewhat frightening trip. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
When you think about fight or flight, I was in flight the entire time. My cortisol
Yes.
levels were very high. I have traveled throughout East Africa and had numerous trips, but this one stands out as the one where I'm like, all of those things that could potentially go wrong
Yeah.
would just go wrong in one trip with a toddler, right?
Right.
Unbelievable.
Well, and the thing is like as you're telling that story, it's like you're experiencing all this, but you're also in like mom mode where it's like, I have to look out for my son who's 2 years old, who like who knows what's going to happen. It's like I cannot even imagine the thought process going through your head with like the life vest of like who's going to be sacrificed. Like it's funny now because you guys all made up, but who's going to be sacrificed because there's only one life vest. And it's
Yeah.
also funny to me that you didn't even nobody considered the boat driver too. Like
I
he could
did
have
not
kept it for
exactly.
himself.
I was like,
Yeah.
you're right. And at some point, when I think about lessons learned and
Right.
trusting somebody
Yeah.
in a position of power or an expertise, you have
Right.
to know when to say when. And I
Right.
trusted him several times, right? I looked at the sky, but you have to certainly take your instinct seriously, right? And there was that second voice when I looked into the sky and I saw the clouds and I said, are we going to be okay? And
Right.
and all the people around were like, no, it's okay. Everyone's going to be okay. These boats go all the time. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, so they know, right? But that voice in my head, I kind
Right.
of wish I listened to it. And then there's another thing that I learned was even though you have an expert, you've got to do your own basic research. And back then
Yes.
we never had ChatGPT. But now there's no reason to be in that situation. What are the questions that I should be asking somebody that's going to be taking a speedboat across? Right? Like what are those key questions? How many life vests? So these are things that
Yeah.
most people would take for granted. But when you are in a third world country and you're looking at a boat that is that small, right? And I've actually taken another boat maybe 2 years ago. I went to the same island and it was
Oh my
wonderful,
God, I can't believe you
beautiful.
went back.
I know. I mean, I am one of those people who
Yeah.
bad experience. I have to go back to it to just
Yeah.
make sure. But but
Yeah.
basically, it was a completely different experience, like really completely different. But back then, it's how many life vests do we have? Right? What is your experience on this boat? Can you swim? I remember asking him if he could
Yeah.
swim, and he couldn't swim. And I was like, but why are you driving? There was all these questions that were going through my head
Right.
while we were in the thick of it, which should have really been asked before. And so I take those lessons with me into the corporate world where it's do your due diligence, get onto ChatGPT, you're meeting with someone, figure out like what are the right questions that I should be asking? Where are the risks? What could potentially go wrong? And then at what point do I jump ship? Right? Because a lot of times we just stay the course, we steer the course, we trust in the process. But you know what? You are
So
the process too.
right. And it's so true. And you literally experience that, right? And it's like there's a certain element where you kind of have to trust the expert, right? Because it's like, yeah, they've done this before, they've been through that, they know how to handle it. But at the same time, it's like there's like your little spidey sense telling you like something's wrong. You should also be coming armed with knowledge and also knowing when is the right time to take back either ownership or take a
Yes.
more leadership type role, which are like very, very valuable lessons to bring into like as you're applying them into like work too, right? It's like you
Right.
can't plan for everything sometimes. And in that situation, you can think hindsight's always 2020. Maybe you should have researched more about like if there was enough life vests on board, or what kind of indigenous animals might be like at risk of like climbing into your cap. But it's like hindsight's always 2020, but it's also like knowing how to handle situations and how to weigh the right options for what is best for you as an
Right.
individual.
As an individual, as a mom that's
Yep.
traveling, and I have to say that experience for many people coming from the Western world is fantastic. That's exactly what they're looking
Yep.
for. They want the
Right.
drama, they want the thrill, they want the story. And for someone like me who has a toddler who's traveled a lot, who's probably had been in other high risk situations that are not kind of related to travel. Oh, have I
Yeah.
lost? That is for me, that was something that I should have kind of taken into account to say, how risky is this going to be for me? Is it
Yes.
this hotel and experience has fantastic reviews. However, who is providing those reviews, right? Is it like single people who really want the thrill, or is it parents? Is this hotel friendly for parents, right? What about someone who just wants calm, right? And just wants to be at the beach? But yeah, so that's that. So I don't know. I'd love to hear any perspectives from you.
Oh my gosh, what a wild story though. It's like, well, I think it's a mix, right? It's like, I don't know if I mean, I know some people like thrill activities, right? But this is more than that, right? And it's like, I think when you travel, like things happen, right? Unexpected things happen. And it's a lot of it is like how you adapt, right? And it's like, how do you figure out, how you should react to certain situations because and what you can learn from it. So I mean I love that story in the sense that you literally had like the lifeboat scenario where it's like okay, there's not enough life vests on board, how are we going to think about it, right? It's like that's a very real thing to experience and to have to consider how you're going to react in the moment. And it's like even still like knowing when to like call the quits on your trip, like the bat thing probably just was even more compounded by the fact that you just had this like crazy experience the day before, and it's just like one activity after another, and then by the third time when you hear about glass in the cereal, you're like, okay,
I think
I
we've done
just
enough, and I've seen
yeah,
enough. and I don't need the risk. And
Right.
I think for me about that bad experience, it's the trade-offs. And we tend to
Yeah.
come against those trade-offs, right? In our workday, where it's like, what am I going to be trading off? Am I going to be trading off quality versus cost? Is it
Yep.
people versus like speed? Right. So we're constantly in a world of trade-offs and knowing when to make the right call and
Yep.
when to make the call. Because sometimes people just don't make the call, right? We could have just
They
sat
don't.
in there and let the bats like say, look, we've got 3 hours left before daylight. Let's just sit here, hunker down. We don't want the wild dogs to get us. And the bat's probably not going to eat us. We're not going to turn into vampires. And
Right.
so, so basically, we could just sit in this situation and let it be. And so for me in that situation, I think that no action is an action. And I think we all have to learn to take control of our lives, right?
Yep.
Sometimes we think we have no
Totally.
control, but you do have control. Like, right?
Yeah. And I think about even the boat situation, right? And it's like, as you're telling that, it's like almost like I consider it like a manager who also, you could equate it to like has their own agenda or their own KPIs. Like the guy who was running that boat, it is literally his job to make sure the passengers get from point A to point B. Right. And it's like, who knows? Maybe he would get in trouble if he wasn't running the boat. Maybe he wouldn't get paid. Like, we don't know that. So maybe it was worth it to him to just continue to shepherd people across because that's what his role was. Right. But, it's like as long as he gets you from point A to point B, it doesn't matter how long it takes. And, he's willing to run the risk. And it's like in the same way, if you're in a work environment, it's like your manager wants you to perform, and maybe continue to like grow within your role. But like it might not actually be in your best interest. And you have to know when to pull out and to pull back because somebody has different interests that aren't aligned with yours.
Yeah, I love what you just said because when I'm thinking about the guy on the boat, one of the things that comes to mind is incentive, right?
Yep.
Like, was he incentive? How was he incentivized? Was it a flat fee? Right.
Yeah.
When you talk about getting from point A to B, he doesn't care. And
Yeah.
so making sure that you're aligned, we are the client. Is the employee aligned with the client in terms of incentive, right? Do they get remunerated the same way? When the client has the best experience, do they get a bonus? Ideally, right? I come from a culture of where we always tip on top of everything.
Yep.
Same as in the US. And so, right. But if he doesn't generally get tips, he doesn't care. And something else that you actually said, which was for him as an employee, thinking about when to quit, right? The risks of not being able to swim and not caring about your own safety because there's a storm there and not checking that there's a life vest because you don't swim and also not checking that there's gas, right? Like, do I have enough gas to get me from point A to B? That gives me a lot of questions about how do we incentivize people in the workforce to do the right thing, to care about themselves, like put on your own face mask. Like we always talk about that. Put on your own mask in the plane before you can put on other people's masks. It's the same thing for him. Make sure that you're going to be safe in your job. Like that you can swim, you have the life vest, and you have the gas. And the conditions are well enough for you to go across. But he just was like, and so there's so much in that particular story. So much.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even the girl that was answering at the front desk was just kind of like unbothered because I'm thinking about, and from her perspective, she's like, oh, okay, you're still in the water. Let me know when you get closer. Right. So it's kind of like the apathetic person that you might work with. That's kind of like, this isn't my problem. I don't want to deal with it until it becomes my problem.
Correct. And so how do we align everyone? And we talk about stakeholder alignment, where it's the employees, the clients, right? Like the community. We all want to make sure that we are driving towards the same goal and that we all feel compensated sufficiently, right? And it's so very interesting, this entire story. And I love this discussion. I love it.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I love it that and this is why for me, a big piece of this and for this series is really like, I think travel is one of the best teachers that there is. And there's so much that we experience when we travel that we can take and apply into our life, right? And in this experience that you had, I mean, there was so many lessons that we've unpacked, but I think the underlying theme is like it made you kind of really take ownership of situations and knowing when to stand up and when to like just trust your gut and trust your instinct to like look out for yourself and your own interests.
And understanding when other people's interests are aligned with
Yes.
yours. And having children, now I have 3 boys, these
Yes.
are conversations that we come up with all the time, whether it's, I'm in class, I'm not sure about this particular topic. Should I go to office hours or not go to office hours? I'm
Yeah.
like, take control. Like, hello, nobody else is going to do that for you. No one can do your push-ups. I always say this to my kids.
I love it.
No one can do the push-ups for you. Like, you have to do your own push-ups. And also, right, when you send an email to a teacher at 10 p.m. at night, don't sit there expecting them to get back to you. Because why? Like, their interests are not as aligned as yours. You might not be able to go to bed because you're so worried about that grade or that test. But there's other things going on. So, like, put yourself in that other person's shoes, right?
Yes.
Before you start judging and saying, well, they were not that responsive. And you talked about that with this particular story where the lady at the reception just was kind of like, okay, well, just let us know. Like, if you want to be an employee moving up, you need to put yourself in the client's hands, because nothing like getting a client who gets off a boat soaked and freaked out, right? That makes it harder for you to do your job, right? So, like, how do we align the people that are bringing the boat guys with the hotel? And I think that that's now been brought together. But like in the past, it was like completely independent, right, of the hotel. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. You need clients. So why don't you just get your own boats to get them over here, right? Like, so that you guys are aligned, right? So I don't know. There is a lot there.
I will say this though, the silver lining, at least you didn't have to take a boat back. Like, it is nice that they offered you and made the opportunity to like get you like I mean, granted, it wasn't like the greatest plane, but like to shuttle you another way, which I do think like, sometimes you just have to, like, again, if we kind of mirror that over into the workplace, it's like being able to just adapt and like kind of meet people with what they really need instead of just, oh, too bad, just go on, take the boat back.
Yeah. Having the backup plan is such a great thing. I think we should always have backups with everything, right? Plan A. And if that doesn't work, plan B. Because, projects get derailed all the time. It could be that, management has a different priority, or, one of the projects had like a, I don't know, cost overruns. And so that means that you can't get your project done, or there's a capacity issue or whatever, right? All sorts of stuff happen. And so you always have to be thinking, I really want to achieve A, but if A doesn't happen, what's the next best thing, right? And so having like that backup plan with everything, and I love backup. And I remember my college friends from Cornell always laugh at me because I used to talk about the backup to the backup to the backup, right? Because I was like, where is the backup to the backup? Right. I know it's funny, but I do live my life like that. Right. So, always have a backup.
Always have a backup, right? Hedge your options.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. All right. So to wrap it up, I have a series of rapid fire questions I just want to throw at you since you are a traveler. All right. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Window or aisle?
Window.
Red eyes, yay or nay?
Yay.
Yay. Okay. I hate red eyes. Ooh, all right. All right. The rest are kind of more geared toward specific locations. Paris Cafe or Tokyo Ramen Bar?
Oh my gosh, that's a very difficult question. You can't ask that.
You got to.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm going to say Paris Cafe for where I am in my life right now. And I can speak French, but I would say I love Tokyo. I went there once for one of my best friend's weddings, and the people, I love the culture. I love everything about Japan. So
I
I
don't know
really
if I
like
could pick one either. It's tough. I know. I'm like,
it.
ooh, it
That's a
depends
tough
on
one.
the day. Yeah. Night
Yes.
train in Europe or a sleeper bus in South America?
Night train in Europe.
Okay. Kayak in Maine or bike in Amsterdam?
Bike in Amsterdam.
Cooking class in Italy or surf lesson in Costa Rica?
I was just thinking about my core. So I know it's very, very funny because I was like, well, can I really handle it? I like to excel. So I'm going to go with the cooking lesson.
All right. A street food crawl in Bangkok or in Mexico City?
It's all about the cuisine here. It's like,
I
what
know. I
cuisine do
know.
I want? I love Thai food.
Yeah.
I also love Mexican food.
Oh my God. Mexico City, the street or the food scene is just, I
It's
know that's,
amazing.
yeah, it depends on the day, what you're in the mood for. A
I'm
Sahara
going to go with
Desert,
Thai.
okay,
Bye-bye.
Thai. Sahara Desert camel ride or rainforest zip line in Belize?
Camel ride.
Ooh. All right. I feel like I know what you're gonna pick for this one, but I gotta ask it anyway. Coffee in Ethiopia or espresso in Milan?
I know that you think you know,
Ooh,
but
but I don't.
I'm going to go with espresso in Milan because
Okay.
I love Italy and I think their coffee is incredible. And yes, I do have a passion for Africa. It's my favorite place to travel to, but I'm going to have to go with Milan because
Oh,
I know coffee from
oh my.
Ethiopia. I know it pretty well. I take it all the time. It's not a new thing for me. So
Oh, it's not new. Okay. I was gonna say it is very, very good.
it's
Okay. All
very
right.
good. Yes.
Uh, Nairobi sunrise or Manhattan skyline at night?
Okay, that's tough because I grew up in Nairobi, but Manhattan is one of my favorite places. It's really my second home. I love it. I'm gonna go with the Manhattan skyline. Nothing
I love
beats
it.
that.
I
Nothing beats
know.
it.
It's
Yes.
true. It's true. All
Yeah.
right. That's all. Thank you so much, Milbert. This was so fun. I appreciate you doing this with me.
Thank you so much for inviting me and have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you. You too.